Hey guys, how's it going? Master Cal here, and today I'm going to be doing the 7th video for my 2021 NFL offseason recap series, the Detroit Lions. So the Matt Patricia era went very poorly for the Lions as they missed the playoffs in each of their 3 seasons, and they were inside the top 10 as far as draft picks for each of those. Patricia was fired after the Lions were blown out at home on Thanksgiving, and replacing him as the permanent head coach is going to be Dan Campbell. Campbell was the New Orleans Saints tight ends coach and also the assistant head coach. He had served as the interim head coach for the Miami Dolphins late in the 2015 season after they fired Joe Philbin that year, so he has a bit of experience there. He brings a lot of energy and intensity, as we've seen from his press conferences, and a guy that the players I think will like. His offensive coordinator is going to be Anthony Lynn, the former Chargers head coach. Lynn was fired by the Chargers, with the Chargers, especially the last 2 years, having blown a lot of late leads, miscues on defense and special teams late, bad clock management as well. But offensively, the Chargers were pretty good, so he should be a good addition for their play calling. And as the defensive coordinator, they brought in Aaron Glenn, who Campbell knows from New Orleans. He was the cornerbacks coach, secondary coach for the Saints. Glenn actually was interviewed for the New York Jets head coaching position, but the Jets opted to instead go with Robert Saleh. And so Glenn will get a shot to be a coordinator in the league. Okay, so the free agents that the Lions were able to retain, their biggest one was Romeo Okwara. He was re-signed to a 3-year contract worth $37 million. $20 million of it is guaranteed. Okwara had a breakout season last year with double-digit sacks, so it was good for the Lions to bring him back there. Linebacker Jalen Reeves-Maybin was re-signed to a 1-year deal worth just under $2.4 million, which is fully guaranteed. He's a key special teamer depth piece who might be able to push for a starting role. Restricted free agent corner Mike Ford was re-signed to a 1-year deal worth $1.2 million with $400,000 guaranteed. Longtime long snapper Don Mulback was brought back on a 1-year deal worth $1.175 million with $50,000 guaranteed. Linebacker / fullback Jason Cabinda was brought back as an exclusive rights free agent, 1-year deal worth $920,000, and also fellow exclusive rights free agents Matt Nelson and Jack Fox were also brought back. They got $780,000 apiece. The Lions free agent additions, they didn't spend a whole ton of money on outside free agents. Their biggest signing was former Packers running back Jamal Williams. They signed him to a 2-year deal worth $6 million, up to $7.5 million, $3.25 million guaranteed. Williams, despite being drafted a couple rounds ahead of Aaron Jones, always played behind Jones with Green Bay, and so Williams will get a shot to get maybe a bit more playing time in Detroit. He won't be the starter; he'll be the number 2, but he's a guy that Anthony Lynn's excited to work with. Speaking of a guy that Lynn's excited to work with, they signed receiver Tyrell Williams to a 1-year deal. It's worth $4 million and fully guaranteed. Williams was released by the Raiders this offseason. He missed all of last season because of a torn labrum. Prior to his time with the Raiders, he spent his first 4 years in the league with the Chargers, so there's obvious overlap there. And I believe he had the best season of his career with Anthony Lynn in, I think, 2017, I want to say. And then he was solid, and then he was solid in 2018. The Raiders signed him to a big money contract in 2019, but he didn't pan out well as a number 1 receiver, which he isn't. He's better suited as a complementary piece. Wide receiver Brashad Perryman was signed to a 1-year deal worth $2.5 million, $2 million guaranteed. He spent last year at the Jets, where he had kind of a disappointing season. The Jets were bringing him in, hoping that he'd be their number 1 receiver and take the next step after he balled out in the last few games of the 2019 season with the Buccaneers. Unfortunately, he missed some time due to injuries, and we all know how bad the Jets' offense was last year, so it was underwhelming. So the former first-round pick will hope to have a bounce-back year with the Lions. His dad played for the Lions back in the 80s, so that's really cool for him to get to play for that franchise then. Another former Packer, quarterback Tim Boyle, signed a one-year deal worth $2.4 million, $1.5 million guaranteed. The Packers declined to tender Boyle as a restricted free agent, and the Lions came in and added him to be the backup. Hasn't really played much in the league. In fact, I don't think he has very much at all. But he's seen as a pretty solid backup. Edge rusher Charles Harris, former first-rounder of the Miami Dolphins, was signed to a one-year deal worth $1.75 million. It's fully guaranteed. Harris has been underwhelming as a first-round pick, and in fact, he was traded for just a seventh-rounder away to the Atlanta Falcons after the 2020 draft, where he had, I guess, an okay-ish season as a rotational player, so he might be able to push for a spot to be a rotational pass rusher. Kicker Randy Bullock, former Houston Texan, New York Jet, and Cincinnati Bengal, was signed to a one-year deal, $1.75 million, fully guaranteed. And he's been fairly solid throughout his career. Linebacker Alex Anzalone was signed to a one-year deal worth $1.75 million, $1.5 million of it guaranteed. Anzalone comes over from the Saints, so he's got familiarity with Campbell and Glenn as well. He's been in and out of the Saints starting lineup, and we'll see if he can establish himself as a full-time starter while with the Lions. They did add former Saints tight end Josh Hill on a one-year deal, but he elected to retire a few months after signing, and after he retired, they wound up signing veteran Darren Fells to a one-year deal, $1.2125 million, $462,500 guaranteed. This will be Fells' second stint with the Lions. He played for them in the 2017 season. Since then, he played for, I think, the Cleveland Browns, and also they spent the past 2 years with the Houston Texans. Safety Dean Marlowe was signed to a one-year minimum salary contract, $437,500 guaranteed. Former Buffalo Bill and Carolina Panther. He was a third safety for the Bills, and he'll have a shot at competing for a starting role with the Lions this year. Wide receiver returner Caleb Raymond was signed to a one-year minimum salary deal, $250,000 guaranteed, and he'll have a shot at competing for a role as a deep threat on the team. Tennessee declined to tender him as a restricted free agent in the offseason. They added cornerback Quinton Dunbar on a one-year deal. Dunbar had a tumultuous last season. He was arrested for armed robbery along with DeAndre Baker after he was traded from Washington to Seattle following an excellent 2019 season with Washington. And when he was able to play, he was really bad, and he missed some time due to injury. So the Lions are taking a low-cost flyer on him. They added some more reinforcements to the secondary with cornerback Corn Elder, former Panther, one-year deal, $920,000. He'll be a guy that can start in the slot. And then they brought in a number of veterans on cheap contracts: receiver Damian Ratley, defensive tackle Brian Price, edge rusher Reggie Gilbert, wide receiver Chad Hansen, cornerback Elijah Holder, cornerback Alex Brown, long snapper Scott Daly, who might have a shot at competing with Molbach for that starting job, tight end Charlie Taumapeo, tackle Darren Paulo, and receiver Michael Warren. And they also added inside linebacker Sean Dion Hamilton off of waivers from the Washington football team. So the Lions' new GM Brad Holmes made a number of cuts in his first season on the job. Cornerback Desmond Trufant, who struggled last year after signing with the Lions after being released by the Falcons, was cut. He signed with the Chicago Bears. Slot cornerback Justin Coleman was released and signed with the Dolphins. Number 2 tight end Jesse James. Defensive tackle Danny Shelton, one of numerous former Patriots that Matt Patricia brought over, was cut. He signed with the Giants. Backup quarterback Chase Daniel, he signed with the LA Chargers. Joe Dahl, who opened the season as a starting left guard. Linebacker special teamer Christian Jones, he signed with the Bears. Former second-round pick Kerryon Johnson was waived and claimed by the Eagles off of waivers. Center Russell Bodine, who opted out of last season. Fullback Nick Bowden, who missed all last year due to injury and has been and with Cabinda, he's kind of expendable. Defense tackle John Atkins was waived. He signed with the Falcons. And then tight end Hunter Bryant was waived with a non-football injury designation. Their free agent departures, their biggest loss is going to be receiver Kenny Galladay, despite having a disappointing 2020 season where he was nagged by injuries. 1,000-yard seasons in 2018 and 2019 was enough to get him a huge deal. He signed a 4-year deal worth $18 million a year with the New York Giants, which was easily the biggest contract handed out to a wide receiver this offseason. Wide receiver slash cornerback slash return specialist Jamal Agnew signed a 3-year deal with the Jaguars. Marvin Jones Jr. also signed with the Jaguars. Darrell Bevell, who was the Lions' offensive coordinator and been the interim head coach after they fired Patricia, is the offensive coordinator for the Jags, and so those guys came over with him. Linebacker Jared Davis, former first-rounder of the Lions, signed with the New York Jets. Linebacker Reggie Ragland signed with the Giants. Kicker Matt Prater signed with the Cardinals. Receiver Mohamed Sanu signed with the 49ers. Guard Oday Abushi, who started at right guard for them, signed with the Chargers. Cornerback Darrell Roberts, another former Patriot, signed with Washington. Safety Duron Harmon, who they acquired in a salary dump with New England last offseason, signed with the Falcons. And safety special teamer Miles Killebrew signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have 4 unsigned free agents. Running back Adrian Peterson, edge rusher Everson Griffin, who they acquired ahead of the trade deadline with the Dallas Cowboys, wide receiver Danny Amendola, and cornerback Tony McRae. The Lions offseason will probably most be remembered for the trade of the Matthew Stafford trade, sending the longtime Lions quarterback, former number 1 overall pick, away to the LA Rams. In return, they took on Jared Goff's contract, and they received a 3rd-round pick in 2021 and first-round picks in 2022 and 2023. So, Stafford, after yet another losing season, requested a trade so that he could hope to play some winning football while he still has some prime years left, and the Lions granted that request. And they'll be getting a guy that Brad Holmes knows fairly well from his time as being in the Rams front office, and Goff is still young enough to where he could succeed and maybe be a long-term option for the Lions. So we'll see about that. But obviously the bread and butter of that was the Lions stocking up on draft picks with that. They also executed a subsequent separate trade with the Rams. They acquired Michael Brockers, a first-rounder of the Rams back in 2012 from LA in a salary dump. They gave up just a 7th-round pick in 2023 to acquire him, and they signed him to a new contract. It's 3 years, $24 million, $11 million of which is guaranteed. He would have had 2 years left on his deal if they would have stuck with the original deal. Brockers had re-upped with the Rams last year on a 3-year deal. The Rams basically needed to dump his salary because the Stafford trade was really hard for them cap wise, and so and so the Lions get a pretty productive defensive lineman who's good against the run and the pass. And I'm going to mention this. They did a draft day trade, but they did with the Cleveland Browns. They traded up into the 4th round. And they gave up a 4th-round pick in 2022 as part of that trade. What it was, they traded up from the 5th round into the 4th round. They acquired a 7th-round pick from the Browns, and they gave up obviously their 5th-round pick and a 4th-rounder in 2022. So Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell's first draft class consists of Oregon tackle Penei Sewell. They took him with the 7th pick in the 1st round. The Lions were very ecstatic when Sewell fell to them, with the Bengals most notably, and also the Dolphins electing to pass on him. And so the Lions now have a very strong offensive line, which is good news for Goff because Goff has thrived when he has a good offensive line, and also good news for the running game because that's something the Lions have been lacking for a long time, has been a good running game. So we'll see about that. With their 2nd-round pick, they took defensive lineman Levi Onwuzurike, the 9th pick in the 2nd round from Washington. They added another guy in the trenches, defensive tackle Aleem McNeil, with the 8th pick in the 3rd round. With the extra 3rd that they had from the Rams in that Stafford trade, they took Syracuse corner Ifeatu Melifonwu, who will hope to have more NFL success than his brother Obi, who, despite being a second-round pick, has struggled in the league. With their fourth-round pick, they took USC receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown, the brother of Green Bay Packers receiver Equanimeous St. Brown. Amon-Ra would have certainly gone higher had this not been another very deep receiver draft class. So the Lions believe they have a steal there. And then after that, right after that, that's when they did that trade with the Browns. They moved up into the fourth round. They moved up to the 8th pick in the 4th round and took Purdue linebacker Derek Barnes. And then as a result, the Lions didn't have a 5th round pick. They did not have a 6th round pick because they had traded that to Dallas to get Griffin. And then their original 7th round pick they did not have. They traded that to the Seahawks as part of the deal when they traded away Quandre Diggs to Seattle during the 2019 trade deadline. And so that 7th round pick that they had from the Browns, it was actually an extra pick that the Browns had. The Browns acquired that pick when they traded for Wyatt Teller before the 2019 season from the Buffalo Bills. The Browns gave up 5th and 6th round picks to acquire Teller and a 7th round pick, which in retrospect that trade is going to be a massive win for the Cleveland Browns, given that Teller established himself as the best guard in the NFL last year. But anyways, with that pick, the Lions took running back Jermar Jefferson. So as far as extensions go, the Lions extended center Frank Ragnow. They assigned him to a 4-year extension. They had also picked up his 5th-year option prior to that, so he's under control for the next 6 seasons. He'll make $54 million from 2023 to 2026, with just under $28 million of it guaranteed. He's one of the best centers in the league, so that's good for them. As far as injuries go, defensive lineman Joel Heath, who they had signed to a futures deal during the offseason, suffered a torn ACL during OTAs, so he'll unfortunately miss the entire season. Alright, so my thoughts on the Lions offseason. I think the Lions did a fairly decent job for themselves. I think the players will buy into Dan Campbell and his intensity, and also that he's good at building relationships with the players. They were able to get a lot of draft picks, especially with the Stafford trade. So the Lions are kind of set up in the future, and they're in such a way, if Goff works out, they have a long-term option. If he doesn't work out, they have the assets to trade up and get a quarterback if there is a quarterback that sets himself apart in 2022 or 2023. And looking at the roster, I mean, the offensive line looks like it could be definitely a top 10, maybe even a top 5 O-line in the league. The defense is going to be a work in progress, but offensively, I'm very high about what the Lions can do, and they may be a pesky team. I don't think they'll contend in the NFC North just yet. Even if the Packers do trade away Aaron Rodgers, or Rodgers does retire, or even there's been some rumors that Rodgers could theoretically opt out of the season. But even if the Packers were starting Jordan Love, I still think the Lions would be the 4th best team in the division. But the rebuild seems to be going on. It seems to be off to a pretty good start. So I listed off needs. I said quarterback, receiver, defensive tackle, cornerback, and special teams were the positions of needs. The special teams because the Lions didn't have a single special teamer under contract. And they've taken care of that by bringing back Molbach, bringing back Fox, and bringing in Bullock. I recorded the offseason preview video for the Lions. That was after the Stafford trade, because the Stafford-Goff trade was first happened actually before the Super Bowl. So the Lions elected not to draft someone who could be a potential successor to Jared Goff, which again that's fine because you want to see how he can do. He's not a dead weight contract-wise, because he can play at a high level, so we'll see about that. However, however, next year could be when the Lions maybe start looking at quarterback if Goff doesn't pan out. I said wide receiver. I would say the wide receiver was somewhat addressed. They brought in Tyrell Williams, Brashad Perryman, Caleb Raymond, and they drafted St. Brown. But especially the first three guys, those first three guys are kind of speed guys, which is fine. But they don't have much else beyond that, and so their receiving core is going to be kind of one dimensional, and it'll be interesting to see how much playing time Amon-Ra St. Brown gets out of the gate. So they don't have a true number one wide receiver, but they do have a lot of speed. And then for defensive tackle, yeah, that was addressed. They took a couple defensive linemen in the draft, and they traded for Michael Brockers, so that was definitely addressed. Cornerback, I would say that was somewhat addressed with Quinton Dunbar and Corn Elder. Elder's okay. Dunbar is a flyer because of the horrible season he had last year. Neither of those guys are signed beyond this year, though, so we'll have to see. They did take Melifonwu as well, so yeah, so not really addressed. And then for secondary positions of need, I listed offensive line, defensive end, and linebacker. Offensive line, that was definitely addressed with Sewell. Defensive end, I already mentioned that before with those defensive linemen they drafted. And then linebacker, yes, that was addressed with Reeves Maben, Deion Hamilton, and Anzalone. So overall, I'd give the Lions off-season, I would say the Lions had a B- off-season. So their projected starters entering the season, at quarterback it'll be Goff, running back DeAndre Swift, left tackle will be Taylor Decker, left guard will be Halapul Vaitai, center Frank Ragnow, right guard will be Jonah Jackson, right tackle Sewell, wide receiver. I'm gonna list their starters as Williams, Perryman, and then Geronimo Allison, who opted out last season. T.J. Hawkinson, coming off a Pro Bowl appearance, will be the tight end. The Lions are going to change schemes from a 4-3 to a 3-4 system. Despite the fact that Glenn comes from New Orleans, who runs a 4-3, they'll be transitioning to a 3-4. So their starters for the 3-4 up front would be Brockers, Nicholas Williams, and then Onwuzurike. Off the edge, you'll have Trey Flowers. As far as middle linebacker goes, I would say that Jamie Collins is going to have one starting job. The other one will be between, I think, Reeves Maben and Anzalone. And then you'll have Romeo Okwara, because his brother Julian is also on the Lions, off the other edge. And then cornerback, Jeff Okudah, the third overall pick last year. The Lions will hope to see significant growth out of him next year. Dunbar will be the other starter on the outside, and then Elder in the slot. Safety, Tracy Walker should be one starter, and then the other one likely comes down to Marlowe or Will Harris, a third-round pick from a couple years ago. If the Lions were to add somebody else, I could possibly see them adding a veteran at safety, such as maybe a Malik Hooker before or during training camp. So that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned for the next off-season recap video.